This is the Thayer Podcast for May 18th, 2023. I ran across this quote from editor Frank Meal in Real Clear Politics on April 24th and decided it needed a little bit more press than it got at the time. As a longtime newspaper editor, I often had to caution young reporters that their opinions were irrelevant, and it was their job to convey the stories and opinions of others so that the readers could make up their own minds. I've listened repeatedly to Liz Crokin, a very well-respected print and video journalist.
I started working in journalism at a very young age. I got my first job working for Fox Chicago at about the age of 17 years old. At the University of Iowa, I studied political science and journalism. One semester, I interned for Bill O'Reilly at Fox News Channel. My last year in college, I interned for the State Department's White House reporter, and that placed me reporting in the White House every single day for a few months. I went on to work for the Chicago Tribune, and my first boss there told me that everything that I should get should be checked over and over and over again and verified to death. That's how I was trained, and that's what a true, honest journalist does.
Took a little more research than I was ready for at the time, but I discovered that Irish poet and wildly popular playwright Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde wrote, "The difference between literature and journalism is that journalism is unreadable and literature is not read." Well, I've been harping on this subject for decades, and it seems like nobody's been listening. I was listening back in 2006 when CBS News icon Walter Cronkite addressed, of all things, the folks who were attending the NCAA National Convention. Asked what he thought the bedrock principle of good reporting is, he said,
"Well, it's the old principles of print journalism. It's good journalism. It's honesty, fairness, truth, and totality of the story, telling both sides of a controversial story. All of those things should be practiced in every story that is carried on the air, as they once were in the better newspapers. Even they have slipped a little bit in recent times. They have lost readership with these same various pressures, to the degree that they're kind of jazzing up the news, if you please, and that's unfortunate. I think that the good journalists, the old timers in there, are fighting the good fight and trying to hold on to what we know to be the principles of good journalism.
In my experience, it can take a lifetime to become a good journalist, and there's a huge difference between a writer and a journalist. A writer does all sorts of stuff, ranging from fiction to propaganda, from work instructions to how-to publications, from promotions to newspaper ads. Some writers do books, others do articles. Oddballs like me call themselves wordsmiths. Be that as it may, a journalist, for the most part, writes reports about newsworthy events based on a collection of facts which answer 5 basic questions: who, what, when, where, and why. Researchers, people who generally work in the sciences, add another question to that list, one reporters and journalists don't necessarily need to know. That is how. For instance, who really needs or wants to know exactly how someone was murdered? You get the point. Let me wrap this up with this little tidbit from journalist Kelsey Samuels about her work.
When I was younger in church, Brother Reed, our youth director, he would always tell us, "You don't change the Bible to fit your life, you change your life to fit the Bible." And I think the same can be said for the truth.
Improvise, adapt, overcome. Semper Fi.